The Camp Tard Reloaded, Part 1, Prologue. I return r/Tardales with another set of tales of camp-related tarddom. This time, the year's 2001. I felt I was finally free of the tards at summer camp. But if I had been, why would I be writing this post? Let's get dangerous, shall we? Be me. Be 13. Be summer vacation. My parents had decided to take a risk with the summer camp yet again, after a few years to recover from CT's shenanigans. Figured a Christian day camp was a bad idea on the second time around. Can you feel it, Mr. Krabs? They signed me up for a Jewish day camp instead. Fucking really, dammit. First day of camp, I'm dropped off by my mother and walk up to meet the rest of the campers. To set the scene for you, r/Tardtales, unlike the last one, this camp was 100% designed as a camp and housed only campers. They had tennis courts, an arts and crafts building, reg office, counselor dormitories. The counselors stayed on site when we left every day at 3 p.m., and a main camp building. There was also a private beach. Get split into groups of 6. I'm put with a counselor I'll call Marcus. My other fellow campers are mostly kids of rich Jews, with another white kid thrown in for flavor. I figure no tards will spoil this day camp experience. Oh, how wrong I was. The Camp Tard Reloaded, Part 2, The Retardeting. Be me. Be the first day of camp. We're eating lunch. Grilled cheese sandwich time. The head counselor walks up and talks to Marcus, who informs us that we are to meet in the main building for a camp-wide meeting right away. But I just started eating my lunch, hangry. Reluctantly put my sandwich away and follow the ground inside the building. The place smells like old cedar and mothballs. Can still smell it even as I type. The head counselor, I'll refer to him as HC from now on, walks up on stage to address all 30 of us. HC is an older Jewish man, built like a brick shithouse, and with the demeanor of one who is fair, but will fuck your world up if you made him angry. Think Chris Evans with the brain of Jeff Goldblum's dad in Independence Day. He clears his throat and addresses us.
Hello, campers. I'm hoping you have settled into your groups and have made some friends. As the head counselor of Camp Juden, I think I speak for everyone when I say we strive to try and be inclusive for all people from every walks of life.
I have an extremely bad feeling about this. He then says the words I dreaded.
So as such, I would like to introduce the head of our new partner organization, who will be discussing our new integration program.
I felt a disturbance in the force, as if a million voices read in Tard Rage, and then were silenced. HC steps aside and a woman walks on stage. I will call her Libby. She exuded the vibes of someone who saw herself as a champion of liberal agendas everywhere. Let me see your manager, shriek. For a woman of her stature, however, Libby gave a very professional and enthusiastic speech about liberal things, loving that our camp was willing to be inclusive and to allow people of less fortunate households to become campers, despite their complications. My ears perk up at this tidbit. Complications? The fuck? Then we hear it. This warbling gurgle that silenced the entire room and alerted us to their presence. What waddled on stage next were several creatures I'd only ever seen in my fever-induced nightmares, or the dreams one gets after eating too much before passing out. Fat, sweaty, and short, this one Aspie Tard looked to be almost twice the age of the oldest allowed at the camp, 15 years old. Though I suspect he was around the same age, and his tardness aged him 15 years. His triple chin seemed to move and vibrate when he gurgled, which would later be the reason we called him Toad. Beside him stood this hulking beast of a Downy, jacked as fuck but with a permanent derp face plastered on him. He almost dragged his knuckles on the ground as he walked, and thus was named Primal. 3 other tards just stood out of view, and appeared to be nothing more than what they seemed. They are not important until later. Libby continues and introduces us to the tards. As HC stated, your camp will be taking in a few of our less fortunate campers to show them different experiences they may not have had at their own homes. I hope you will make them all feel welcome. Oh shit, here we go again. The Camp Tard Reloaded, Part 3, The Satanic Guardian. Be me, be 13, be into Yu-Gi-Oh! And decide to bring my cards to camp. During the last week, I'd made friends with the only other middle-class white kid in my group, whom I'll call Ricky. We have the same interests, same sense of humor, and same hatred of tards. Feels ecstatic man.jpg. Be near the main building, trading Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, when a shadow approaches and blots out the sun. We look up. Toad is standing with Primal. They say nothing at first, but I can feel his eyes on my binder of cards. Finally, he speaks, with a strange mixture of his frog-like gurgle and tard speech.
What are those?
Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, I reply in a very matter-of-fact tone, hoping maybe my bluntness would indicate to this guy that I don't wish to engage in conversation with him and would prefer that he left. With a nickname like Toad, he doesn't give you the impression that he's a very reasonable person, and in fact, he wasn't.
Can I look at them?
He croaks out. I look over at Ricky, who decides to be a bit more blunt with these tards, and tells them to fuck off. This was a terrible decision.exe. Toad Rage activates. He grabs the binder from my hands and proceeds to tear the front cover off of it, throwing it at Ricky. He ducks, but it grazes his shoulder and smashes into the wall behind us. Cards everywhere. Primal jumps in and takes a swing, punching me in the stomach and taking some of the cards that spilled from my binder. The Wranglers arrive just as the grubby fuckers pocket the handful, with Marcus in tow. We explain what the tards did, showing my binder as proof. Libby comes storming out to confront the guilty party, and sees Toad and Primal looking as sweet and innocent as spastic cherubs. "What happened here, she asks in her shrill voice. Marcus attempts to explain the situation, but Libby's ire is turned directly onto me. "It's people like you," she shrieks, jamming me in the chest, "that make my job so much harder. These boys have nothing. Let them have those cards. You don't need them." R/entitled parents crossover, anyone? I look at Marcus in disbelief, who gives me a look of defeat. Fuck that shit is mine. They almost knocked out Ricky with my binder. Then you shouldn't bring it to camp. But they're mine. Libby grabs the cards off Toad and shows me Celtic Guardian. "Do you see this?" she asks harshly. I nod. "It's Celtic Guardian." "Well, this Celtic thing is a demon, and you're offending them with your satanic rhetoric." Spittake.mov. I thought at first that she was just being overdramatic, but then I saw the lack of self-awareness in her eyes. She legit thought the card that depicted an elven warrior was a satanic image. She then pocketed the cards before I could even speak. I attempt to argue more, but Libby just cuts me and Ricky down, and I watch as Toad and Primal saunter off with my cards. Of course, you realize, this means war. The Camp Tard Reloaded, Part 4, Revelations. Be me, be pissed. Be the next week. Ricky and I begin to plot. I want to ruin these tards' existence. This wasn't about the cards. This was about the principle. These fuckers pushed us around and got away with it. Turnabout was fair play. I remembered the teachings of Night and how we had to stand up to them, though I did twist the morality of the situation. Lawfulevil.gif. We make note of their movements, who they talk to, what they do. Toad is never seen without Primal, and they are separated from their tarred group of campers only during lunch and bathroom breaks. Otherwise, they are with the Wranglers and Libby, under constant supervision. We both knew that physically attacking a Tard was an option we had to use as our nuclear option. We'd be crucified if we did it, hence it was left as the final option. A more delicate touch was required, and thus needed to try and get the fuckers removed from camp due to some kind of fault of their own. After a few days, we learned their schedules, but more importantly, when Libby would be preoccupied with the other Tards. Second activity block, till the start of lunch. We had an hour. Luckily for us, Marcus decided to have a 3-group game of soccer in a field that happened to sit just behind the office. Her window even faced the field. Serendipity.png. I casually slip away from the game, with Ricky covering for me, and I sneak towards the office. Stealth check, natural 20. Rogue class confirmed. I reach the wall directly below the window, which is open. This feels a little too easy. I wait a moment and listen, but hear no shuffling or boards creaking from inside, and so I hoist myself up. The office is quiet and still, but as I swing myself inside, I hear the distinct voice of HC a room over, talking on the phone. If he'd have heard me, I'd have been so fucked. Honestly, looking back, I have no idea what possessed me to even attempt this. I don't even recall what I was looking for, but I found it nonetheless, or at least something of interest. A child's drawing, or a Tard's depending. A drawing pinned to a bulletin board on the far wall. A drawing of 2 figures with a taller woman. The names made my skin go pale. Primal, Toad, and Libby. Primal is Toad's fucking brother. Worse yet though, Libby is their fucking mom. Brick shit activate. I climb quickly out the window and inform Ricky. The game has evolved. The Camp Tard Reloaded, Part 5. Never touch my sandwich. Be me. Be stumped and pissed. Toad and Primal have been pestering me, Ricky, and the rest of the campers with little to no intervention by Libby. All except if those being pestered decide to stand up for themselves. Feels frustrating, man.webm. Lunchtime. Best time of the day as voted by readers of OP Magazine. I sit with Ricky and 2 other kids in our group whom I'd befriended. Let's call them Morgan and Ryan. Morgan and Ryan are identical twins. Tall, thin Jews from a rich family. However, unlike most rich kids, these 2 were raised right and weren't conceited or entitled. Always up for a prank. Still see them from time to time. I'm about 3 bites into my egg salad sandwich when I hear the familiar gurgle. For fuck's sake. Toad and Primal stand before us and instantly try to take my lunch. Motherfucker. I let you look at my Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I tried to be nice to you. You took my cards. You pushed me around. And now you try to fuck with my lunch. If you touch my lunch, I will break you. I will cut a bitch.sandwich. This was my internal monologue. Outwardly, I simply turned my body and continued to eat my lunch, not breaking eye contact with Toad. He gave a whine and continued to reach, roughly shoving the pit of his arm into my face to grab my meal, which was at my full arm's extension to try and keep it away. I didn't realize this until I turned my head back and my nose touched the skin. I had to breathe, and unfortunately, I did. The smell. I cringe even now. I now know what hell smells like. What is deodorant anyway, am I right? I let out a loud cough and shoved him away, and it was about then that Primal snatched my sandwich and had jammed it straight into his mouth. iTwitch.gif. Situational assessment protocols activated, applying appropriate reaction protocols. Rebooting. Be me. Be fucking irritated to the point of rage. Toad, angry that I didn't give him my lunch, goes into Toad rage. Ricky grabs my shoulder to get my attention, and I turn. Sucker punch.mpeg. Stumble and recover, standing straight up. Ricky told me later he could feel the rage coming off of me in that moment. I slowly turn, but before I can do anything, guess who decided to swing by to check on her perfect little angels? Of course you know. Libby can see by my body language and facial expressions that I was about to wreck someone. Her idea of a good response? Bitch me out, of course. A lot of this was coming secondhand from Ricky, as my world had gone completely red by then. I can't recall hearing anything besides the ringing in my ears. I felt Ricky grab my arm and pull me away, with the twins in tow. It took me a few hours to calm down, and thankfully the boys were there to keep me away from those tards. Revenge for my lunch will be sweet. The Camp Tard Reloaded Part 6. They're taking the normies to Eisentard. Be me. Be the following Monday. Toad and Primal have been oddly quiet today. Nope, I don't like it. Something is afoot, but me or the lads couldn't put our fingers on it. I could hear Knight's words echoing in my mind. Live and let live. If we ignore them, they will not bother us. Fuck it, it's a good day. They aren't being assholes to us. I'll just enjoy myself. Go about my day. Third activity block rolls around. I'm leaving lunch, headed to the archery field. Basically 3 hay bales set up with painted bullseyes on them. Marcus is with another counselor, and we're attempting to hit the targets. Robin Hood we are not. We then hear Marcus say, "Oh, hi, Libby. Can we help you?" I turn. Libby is standing there with Toad and Primal, along with her other Tard group members. They want to use the bows and arrows. Even a fucking idiot would understand this is an exceptionally bad idea, and Marcus stated as much. Libby, I'm all for including people, but HC told us your group isn't allowed. Libby cuts him off and speaks over him. I've already spoken to HC. He's given me and my campers special permission to use this equipment. Now kindly show them how to use it. Yeah, no thanks. I'm good. I decided it was time to back away slowly, and got as far out of the range as I could of the Tards and their stormtrooper aim. Primal waddles up and Marcus, reluctantly, starts showing him how to use the equipment safely. He grabs the arrow in his chub hand mid-demonstration, turning to us. Fly, you fools.mov. With a loud screech, he rushes at Ricky, arrow tightly grasped in his hand. Ricky, for his part, ran like the devil himself was chasing him. I looked over to Libby and saw the shit-eating grin on Toad's face. Have you heard nothing Lord OP has said? This Tard must be destroyed. Legolas.mp4. Ricky managed to leap into the restroom building and lock the door, and Primal smashed right into the door. He hammered away at it, screaming in uncontrollable rage. He jammed the arrow into the door, shattering the carbide shaft and embedding the tip about an inch through the opposite side. The Wranglers finally managed to drag Primal away, and all that could be heard inside was a soft weeping. The door opened to reveal Ricky, curled into the fetal position, crying. Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of Tard War. The Camp Tard Reloaded, Part 7. Enter Norm. Be me, be with the lads, swimming time. Oh yes, .gif. Heading to the beach when Ricky taps my shoulder to get my attention. I turn and see a large Aspie running right at us, out of breath and on the verge of passing out. Tendi senses tingling. We prepare ourselves for the oncoming onslaught, but something doesn't feel right about this. He reaches us and collapses at our feet, wheezing. You okay? Morgan asks him. The kid grabs his chest and slowly manages to catch his breath again, and we help him to his feet. He thanks us, and that's when I got a good look at him. He was the tard that had been furthest back on stage when Libby had first incorporated these fuckers into the camp. But other than that one time, I hadn't seen him since. He was your standard model Aspie, no frills and nothing of note about him other than his bottle-end glasses and slightly obese frame. But most importantly, he gave off this aura of being 100% average. I shall call him Norm for this story. Norm tells us he ran from the camp to catch us, which impressed us. The walk to the beach was easily 10 minutes if you took your time and were in decent shape. The fact that he ran the entire way, while both being obese and without stopping, gave us pause. Why was he running? He'd heard through the grapevine that we were considering taking down the Tard Menace. He then confided in us that both Toad and Primal had bullied him. He said Libby was also extremely mean to him, but he didn't know why. He then started to cry. He pleaded for us to let him join our group. Right in the fucking feels. I could feel the righteous fury of night burning in the back of my mind. These tards had gone too far. They picked on us and gotten their mother to bitch us out. That was fine. We were teenagers. We could handle it. But then, these tards decided to pick on another tard. One who kept to himself and didn't hurt anyone. He posed no threat to them at all. A line had been crossed. These spud motherfuckers were going down. Paladin Oath of Vengeance activate. Rogue Paladin multiclass confirmed. Lawful good.jpg. We smile and bring him with us to the beach. He calmed down after a while. Marcus, being a chill counselor, allowed him to participate with us in activities after hearing his story. Norm has joined your party. The Camp Tard Reloaded, Part 8, Knee-Deep in the Sped. Be me, be Friday. The boys and I, Norm included, had managed to come up with the basic framework of a plan to get rid of Libby and the Tards. To defeat them, I'd have to give up my lunch to get intel to fill in the gaps in her plan. The shit I do for you normies, I swear. Second activity period rolls around, and Marcus suggests soccer at the field from before. By all means, gents, don't let me stop you. Whistling innocently.exe. Like the last time, I slipped away and pressed myself against the main office building. I looked at Libby's window and could hear Libby's voice from inside. I throw caution to the wind and peek inside. Libby is there with the Tards, including Norm. She is intently focused on her phone, while the others in the room are being Tards. Norm had told me, prior to this moment, that this was some kind of special activity time she gave them to keep his peers quiet, and to avoid incidents like the one with the archery equipment. Norm had sat right near the window, and saw my head peek up. He gave me a knowing nod, and I retreated to ground level to wait. I watched the window quietly close. I shall put a pin in the story for a moment to provide context. I'd told Norm I needed to get into Libby's office before the lunch period, and he'd mentioned this specific activity would be occurring around then. When asked what he would do to distract her, Norm simply requested that I trust him. Not like I had any other option, but I told him I did. I sit in the cover of the woods, waiting anxiously. The room had gone silent. After a minute or two, I hear Libby. "Everyone out now!" A loud scramble of footsteps follow, and a few moments later, I hear Libby loudly complaining about something. I crawl back to the window and listen closely. One set of steps quickly approach the window. I panicked and jumped back deeper into the woods. My legs caught a tree limb, and onto my ass I went. The window opened, and I thought this was it. Whoever it was would see me, and the jig would be up. I see HC's head pop out to gasp for air, and then retreat, leaving the window open. A moment passed, and then another. I can still hear Libby outside berating someone, but couldn't catch the words. I could only tell it was her from the shrieking tones. I clamber into the office and immediately realize what Norm had done to clear the room. and held my nose. The crazy motherfucker had purposely shit himself. If I'd had any doubt to this Aspie's loyalty to us, this erased it. I rifled through Libby's desk, knowing vaguely what I was looking for. I had recalled that upon sign-up, my mother and I had filled out a set of forms that had provided information about me to the camp. Eye color, weight, psychological issues, and such. But the most important aspect for my revenge was one single category: allergies. I finally managed to find the TARD's form amidst a mess of papers. I search through them and find Primal's form. Allergies? Mayonnaise. I then look for Toad and find he doesn't have any allergies noted. I get disheartened until I see a single sentence written onto the "Other Notes We Should Know About" section. Toad is very adversely affected by seeing vomit. If he sees it, he will vomit. It was in Libby's handwriting. I had enough to go forward with my plan. It would be lame by comparison to other plans that other OPs have pulled off, but it would still work. I then noted something that was missing from both sheets. Libby had not registered Toad and Primal as her children, but as the children of two separate families, despite proof to the contrary. Libby had falsified registration documentation for her retarded crotch goblins, and was keeping these forms in her own office. OP's got a wonderful, awful idea. Grinchsmile.gif. I vacate the office after getting a little more information and relay it to the lads. And the game is on. The Camp Tard Reloaded, Part 9, Operation Tardinaise. Be me. Be Monday. Be the day I end this. Mom usually made my lunch, and I had decided on an egg salad sandwich for today's. Like Primal, I'm allergic to mayonnaise, so my maternal unit usually assembled a sandwich without the white demon condiment in the mixture. Today, I made my own lunch, and put as much mayo as I could into the egg mixture to ensure maximum allergic effect. I head to the camp as usual, and the lads and I put the plan into action. It was a simple two-phase operation. Phase 1, inform HC about the goings-on and judge his reaction to see if we proceed. And Phase 2, use Primal's allergy to mayo against him, his brother, and Libby. Phase 1 would be simple enough to complete. The camp had sent home a copy of all the rules and rights a camper and/or their parents had in regards to conduct, as HC always liked to cover his own ass, but was a very fair individual. 2 clauses are the key to the aspect of the plan, paraphrased, of course. Clause 1, a parent and/or camper must bring any instances of bullying to the attention of their counselor. They are expected to handle these situations, but can escalate the issue to the HC if necessary. And Clause 2, failure to provide accurate information on registration forms is punishable with removal from the camp without the refund of their deposit. Prepare to attack the enemy's control points. Sandwich.tf2. Knowing Norm was with Libby until lunch, we had an assurance that she wouldn't interfere with Phase 1. Me and the boys meet up with Marcus and head to the archery field for the first activity block. I pull him aside and ask him point blank about Toad and Primal, and whether he feels they are doing things deliberately, or just don't know better. He responds that he feels they know exactly what they are doing. I then ask if he would like me to see HC about this instead of him dealing with the situation. He agrees to my proposal and sends me and Ricky to inform HC about the incidents. We enter the main office building, knocking on HC's door. We are allowed inside and are seated. HC lets us speak, and we lay out everything Libby, Toad, and Primal had done since they had first arrived. One thing I will say about HC is that he was willing to hear both sides of the story, and gave every situation with his campers his undivided attention. Once we finished, there was silence. HC leaned back in his chair, tapping his hand on an armrest as he processed everything. He sat forward and gave us a stern look.
Libby never informed me of any of this. She just told me there had been an issue, but she'd handled it.
My heart sank. Not like this. Please, not like this. Game over. Yeah. But to my surprise, HC leaned back again and smiled. He assured us that he would look into things and stated Marcus had mentioned similar incidents prior to us coming to see him. We were then sent on our way. Phase 1 complete. The Camp Tard Reloaded, Part 10. Coup de grace. Be me, be with the lads. Lunchtime cometh. It is time. I take out my sandwich, keeping it in plain view. Ryan taps me on the shoulder and gives a small head bob to get my attention. I casually look up and see Toad and Primal, tardy as ever, approaching our group. I take a bite out of my sandwich, and despite everything inside me yelling not to, I swallow. Have to make it seem real. The shit I do for you normies.webm. Toad once again reaches for my sandwich, and once again I prevent him from getting to it, trying to avoid biting the sandwich any further. Take a shot every time I say sandwich or sandwich. Alcohol poisoning.tiff. As before, Toad goes for the pit maneuver, and like a good little anon, I bumble into it. I can't help but cackle internally as I feel Primal snag my sandwich. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. I give Toad a hard shove, making him topple backwards onto his ass. He starts to cry. Was that necessary to the plan to shove him that hard? No. Did I do it on purpose? Fucking A right I did. TrueNeutral.mpeg. Primal stuffs the laced sandwich into his drooling maw and swallows without so much as a cursory examination. I can feel it, Mr. Krabs. Toad's cries have turned into screams of dismay, and all the other campers and counselors are staring at us. I feel a gurgle in my stomach. Get your ponchos, gents. We're entering the splash zone. And then I hear it. The melodious voice of an angel being repeatedly run over by a semi-truck. What is going on here? Libby sees Toad writhing in tard on the ground and me swaying a little and holding my guts, and she approaches at a brisk run. HC is right behind her. Ricky and the twins run up and stop HC from getting any closer, while Libby gets right into my face. Did you push him? I knew you were trouble. I'm going to make sure your ass is out of this camp by the end of today. You're done. Libby is screaming at me, but I can feel my guts alerting me to an impending response to the mayo. I try to warn Libby, but she cuts me off. How dare you interrupt an adult? Didn't your mother ever teach you manners? My boys had to be taught to respect my wishes, and now they are... Her sentence is cut short by a scream, as my body rejected the mayonnaise in the most dramatic fashion possible. Projectile vomit. I weakly wiped my mouth as Libby stumbled back in shock. It was about this time Toad saw the vomit and held his mouth, spewing chunks toward Libby as well. She was blindsided and fell backward onto the ground, now dripping with spew. Primal waddled up to her and she looked at him. Where's your liberal god now, .kek? Primal let forth a fountain from his own allergic response and hit Libby. HC approached after Primal turns and continues to puke off to the side. He crouches in front of me.
You okay, son?
He asks. I nod.
Okay, Marcus, get this guy a Gatorade or something.
He then asks the magic question.
Were you feeling sick at all?
I explain I was allergic to mayo and must have accidentally put it on my egg salad sandwich. He then asks why Primal was throwing up as well. I weakly shrug and say that I had no idea. He'd taken my lunch, consumed it, and must have been allergic or something. Libby finally manages to stand and shrieks at me before HC can respond. You little cocksucker. You knew he was allergic to mayonnaise. You were in my office. I knew someone had been in there. You were in so much goddamn trouble, you horrible fucking child. I'm going to teach you a lesson for hurting my son. The entire camp fell silent. HC slowly turned towards Libby for a brief moment,
Son,
was all he said. Libby covered her mouth in shock. I just grinned. Phase 2 complete. HC glared at her and told her to wait in his office. Toad and Primal were dragged off by some unlucky wranglers to be kept in quarantine. I'm escorted to the bathrooms, where I proceed to have a bad time for at least an hour. But it was so worth it. The Camp Tard Reloaded, Part 11. Sweet, sweet victory. Be me. Be queasy. Be in HC's office with a bucket on my lap. My mother had been called and was on her way to get me. Praise Akatosh. Libby had managed to clean the spew off of her and sat, sulking like a child, as HC ripped her a new one. He had found the registration paper for the two, and confirmed what I had discovered. Libby had falsified important information on the forums regarding her relationship to Toad and Primal. That alone wasn't bad enough. She would have been fired for all of this on her own, but it got so much worse. HC demanded to know what she was hiding from him. It stood to reason if she was lying about this, she had to be keeping other things from him as well. Libby fidgeted in her chair, but kept quiet. HC leaned across his desk and glared right into her eyes.
I'm giving you two options, Libby. Either A, you tell me truthfully what you've been hiding from me and the counselors, or B, I search your office and find out the hard way.
The blood drained from her face, and Libby finally spilled the beans. She had conned the parents of Norm and the other Tards into thinking that there was an integration program. There wasn't one. She charged them an exorbitant fee and pocketed the money. Motherfucker, what? Query? Suddenly, it all made sense. The indoor class, the separate group, Norm's bullying by Libby. He must have known she was a sham, and she made his life hell for it. On a bonus note, turns out HC had no idea about the archery incident with Primal until now. Go figure. HC slowly takes a deep breath and gives her the disappointed Jewish parents glare, and then turns to me.
OP, I'm very sorry for all that happened to you. You and your friends have my sincerest apologies and assurance.
He then looks back to Libby.
That this will not happen again.
It was around this time that my mother showed up and I was taken home. I have no idea what was said after I left, but when I returned to camp a day or two later, all the Tards were gone, as well as Libby. Sadly, this included Norm, but his sacrifice was not in vain. Finally, we were free. Finally, the Tards were gone. Feels good, man. .png. The end.